The Claiming of Grimmauld Place by bixgirl1. Chapter 2, Part 3. Full Friendship. Harry waved goodbye to Ron and Hermione as the flare of green from the flue took them home. Somehow the copious amounts of alcohol had led to Monopoly, and then to poker. Not strip poker, thankfully, as Blaise had gleefully suggested, and finally to sipping cocoa as they'd watched the television blarely. Luna and Ginny left first, followed suspiciously close by Parkinson and Blaise shortly thereafter, who'd announced he wasn't done for the night, then spent 20 minutes debating which seedy club he thought he'd be able to pull at, grumbling about Parkinson's departure. Finally, Hermione, half asleep on Ron's shoulder, had reached up to curl a hand behind Harry's neck and pull him down to kiss his cheek. "It was a good party, right?"
"It wasn't a party,"
he insisted with a low laugh. He made a wounded noise, and Harry smiled into her fluffy curls.
"But you did a great job."
"Take me home and do one of those Scrabble things to me," she said to Ron. Harry huffed, taking in the stupidly bright smile that lit across Ron's face.
"If you'll take a sobering potion first,"
Ron said. She smiled goofily up at him, then at Harry. "He's so good. Isn't he good? I like him. Do you like Malfoy or Draco? He said to call him Draco."
Harry
looked at Ron, who gave him a one-armed shrug as if to say,
"Can't help you there, mate. You should get some sleep."
"I'm going to take a sobering potion," she said, managing to sound prim even as she basically announced to him that she'd decided to shake Ron in a few minutes. He tried not to remember some of the words that had filled the board by the end of the game and guided them firmly to the floor. Harry looked around, sighing. He considered leaving the mess, glasses and food strewn about, Hermione's streamers and the scattered board games and cards no one had bothered to put back into their boxes properly, but warily flicked his wand instead, levitating the dishes to the kitchen, reassembling the games and vanishing the decorations. He opened the French doors and, almost as if he'd been waiting, Frank moved out of his inertia and began to make a way for them. Harry floated him outside and set him down gently, then turned to stare at Goyle, whose head was resting on the back of the sofa, mouth hanging open. Malfoy was stretched across the other seat, his socked feet in Goyle's lap. They were both snoring quietly. Harry wondered if you were able to take a photograph from a pensive memory. He crouched at Goyle's side.
"Hey, Goyle."
He nudged his arm.
"Goyle? Greg?"
Greg's eyes fluttered open.
"What?" "There are rooms upstairs if you need one,"
Harry offered quietly. Guy wasn't such a bad bloke when no one he respected was telling him to be. In fact, during the short discussion Harry had had with him over the course of the evening, Harry wondered how he'd ever been. It was hard to reconcile his memories of Goyle, the hulking croony, with the reality of Greg, the shy musician.
"Second floor."
No,"
Greg mumbled. He rubbed a hand over his eyes and yawned.
"Sorry. Where'd everyone go?"
"It's late. They went home."
"Good party, Potter,"
Greg rumbled, yawning louder this time. He gently lifted Malfoy's feet off his lap and stood stretching.
"It wasn't a party,"
Harry said, snorting.
"Little weird being surrounded by couples, eh?"
Greg said with a sigh.
"Maybe invite more single people next time."
"You want a setup?"
Harry asked, a smile pulling at his mouth.
"Oh, no,"
Greg said. He scratched at the side of his neck, then blinked at Harry.
"I don't like people that way. But it would be nice to have more people to talk to when everyone pairs off."
"Oh, okay,"
Harry said, then stopped guard.
"Wait a minute, there were only 2 couples here."
"You know what I mean."
He bashfully lifted his wide, meaty shoulders.
"Blaise and Pansy usually pair off. Except this time Luna decided to bring Pansy home with her and your ex."
"No,"
Harry said, cringing.
"Then there's Hermione and Ron, of course. Blaise counts, I guess, except he always wants to have sex, so he's no fun come the end of the night."
Greg continued thoughtfully.
And then there's you and Draco."
Harry closed his eyes.
There isn't me and Draco. There's always been you and Draco,
Greg said, tone so practical that Harry was hard-pressed not to believe him.
You couldn't even wait for us to leave before you snogged him in the kitchen. I didn't not snore.
Harry started to squawk, but Greg cuffed him on the shoulder with one huge hand, and Harry wobbled to keep his balance.
So, more friendly type people next time, yeah?
Greg said hopefully.
Yeah,
Harry said heavily. He rubbed his shoulder.
Cool. Be nicer, Draco.
He said simply, perhaps just too in the habit of protecting Malfoy to give it up easily. Harry nodded, processing that sluggishly.
I am. We're friends now. Yeah, he told me.
Greg shook his head and sighed.
He's supposed to be the smart one, too.
He added enigmatically, then headed to the flue and took a pinch of flue powder, ducking his head to walk in.
See you later, Harry. Thanks for the cake.
Sure,
Harry said uncertainly. Watched Greg disappear and stood for a moment, dreading what he'd see when he turned around. It wouldn't be wrong to leave Malfoy sleeping, perfectly comfortably, on the sofa. Could walk up the stairs with not a single glance in Malfoy's direction. He was tired and drunk too. Why the hell was it up to him to take care of everyone else? It shouldn't be. He should just go to bed and have it done with. Sighing, he walked over to Malfoy, whose mouth was sagging open slightly. Harry crouched down and gripped his shoulder, shaking him lightly.
Malfoy,
he whispered.
Wake up.
Malfoy mumbled something and rolled to his side, his fringe flopping over his forehead. He looked younger in his sleep. Not haughty, not cold. But that wasn't much of a surprise. I realized with a start that he'd stopped thinking of Malfoy as cold weeks ago.
Psst, Malfoy,
he said louder, shaking his shoulders again. Then, thinking of Greg, he swallowed and said,
Draco, wake up.
Draco stirred, one hand snapping out to circle Harry's wrist, his long fingers curled tight around it, and his eyes opened. He looked so aware in that second that Harry was startled when Draco's voice came out sleepy and slurred from drink.
I like it when you call me Draco.
First time ever.
Harry pointed out inanely. Draco's fingers were warm on his wrist. His thumb pressed tight over Harry's pulse point, which fluttered fast.
Sounded good, Draco said, yawning. Are we going to bed?
Harry coughed.
It's, time for bed now, yeah? Unless you want to stay here, that's fine.
No, I'll go up with you.
Draco murmured, eyes slipping shut again. He breathed quietly for a moment, then jerked when Harry pulled his wrist away.
Okay, yeah.
Harry stood and didn't imagine the way Draco's eyelids slid up his body to face his with a sort of bleary fascination.
Do you need help up?
Draco blinked again.
No, I'm good.
He heaved himself on.
Did everyone leave?
Yeah, Greg just now.
Pence wants to shake your girlfriend and love good.
Draco mumbled, scraping his hair off his face.
Right?
Harry groaned.
Don't remind me. I'm trying to pretend that's not happening right now.
Why? Not like it matters to you. You're...
He waved a hand, indicating something about Harry that Harry couldn't figure out.
All right, yeah, Harry concealed. I hope they have lots of orgasms, okay? Should we discuss what position they're using?
Draco made a face.
Merlin, no, sorry, I just... Fuck.
He ran a hand over his face again, then exhaled loudly.
I'm going to need a hangover cure.
Harry extended a hand.
Come on, up you get.
Draco fit his palm into Harry's and let himself be hauled up. Their faces were incredibly close.
I wondered if you were gay.
Draco said, as slowly as Frank at his fastest.
I'm not sober and you're drunk.
His voice was strained.
More than a bit.
Draco agreed.
It's a bad idea.
Harry rolled his shoulders and realized Draco's hand.
There. Can you make it up the stairs?
Not saying I don't want to, Potter. Do you top or bottom?
Groaning, Harry took a step away, then another.
What are you doing?
Draco waved that negligent hand again.
Drunk. You look decent.
Thanks, Harry said faintly. You should go to bed.
Alone?
Fuck Malfoy, Harry snapped. Yes, alone.
Okay.
Draco turned, swaying, and spotted Frank outside. He whistled low, and Frank began his arduous trek back indoors. Draco turned to Harry, triumphant.
He comes when I call him.
Dogs do that too. Doesn't make them magical. Harry sat, caught somewhere between laughter and tears and climax. Go to sleep.
You're just as annoying as you were when we were 12.
But even as Draco said it, he smiled. It was wide and loose around the edges, and Draco's gaze was hazy. He looked at Harry for a second longer, then walked unsteadily past him, his robes open and fluttering around him like a coat. He was wearing a dress shirt underneath, top-bottoms open to reveal the hollow of his throat. Harry wanted to lick it.
That's funny,
Harry mumbled when he was sure Draco couldn't hear anymore.
You're not.
He waited until he had Draco at the top of the stairs, then helped Frank the rest of the way back into the house.
You should meet with him,
came a whisper mirroring Harry's thoughts so perfectly that his knees went weak. He glared at the wall.
Just because you like him doesn't mean I have to,
said furiously under his breath.
I mean, I do, but you don't know what things were like with us, and we live together, and he's probably fucking with me, and he's drunk in half of his nuts. He doesn't know what he's offering.
He waited for the house to respond, but it remained eerily silent. Harry pointed his wand at the French doors and slammed them shut, then stalked up the staircase to indulge in a frustrated wank. Harry blinked his eyes open in the darkness of his room. The doors were bound, and the moon was still visible in the sky beyond his window. He thought about casting a Tempest charm, but it didn't really matter. He had to pee too badly anyway. Cursing himself for having consumed so much alcohol, he stumbled out of bed and over to the loo.
Son of a bitch!
He rattled the knob a few more times, then summoned his wand and cast at it, but the door remained stubbornly locked, even seeming to swell to stay in place. Glaring, Harry muttered,
I thought you liked the party.
He made his way out to the hall, his bladder achingly urgent, and hobbled to the nearest bathroom, which was, of course, also locked. Fuming, he started to head down the stairs. He just withheld candy from Paul for a couple of days if he started throwing rocks again, when he passed Draco's door and hesitated. He tried the knob, dancing lightly in place, and when it turned for him, released it and pounded on the door in 3 frantic warning knocks before entering. In the darkness of the room, he barely saw Draco sit up in bed as he strode past him and bellowed, "This fucking house!" before letting himself into Draco's thankfully open bathroom and slamming the door behind him, shoving his flannel bottoms down and groaning with relief. Business taken care of and hands washed a couple minutes later, Harry walked back into the bedroom. Draco had spelled on a low lamp and stood heavy-lidded and swaying slightly, holding onto one of his bedposts. He was shirtless and wearing nothing but a low-slung set of deep green cotton pajama bottoms, the front of which tinted slightly with what looked like to be remnants of a sleep boner. Or a new one. Harry couldn't be too sure. His own cock twitched with interest. Dragged his eyes up to Draco's pale, lean stomach, gaze lingering on the soft line of hair that trailed from his belly button down past the waistband of his pajamas. Drew his eyes further up, taking in Draco's nipples, his mostly smooth chest, marble white and covered in rangy muscles and slashing silver scars from just under his collarbone to the edge of his hip. There were 5 of them. Harry swallowed and looked away.
"Couldn't sleep?"
Draco asked, yawning. He blinked, still obviously more than little sozzled. Harry frowned.
I had to piss. My bathroom decided to lock me out again, and we're not waiting for another fucking second before house lessons, Draco.
Draco gave him a tiny confused smile before seeming to realize what he was doing. He scowled instead.
It's the middle of the fucking night. I don't care.
The room spun slightly, and Harry gave a lurching step to right himself.
Look, do you have any sobering potion? Nuh-uh, just hangover cure.
Draco sat back down on his bed. He rotated his neck right and left, then fell bonelessly sideways.
So, morning? I'll take the morning off. I can do that. I live here.
What are you on about? Harry demanded, staring at Draco as he buried his side of his face into his pillow.
Get up. I don't want to come in here every time I have to pee. Then don't.
Draco mumbled, eyes closed. He kicked the blankets caught under his knees down, then slipped his feet under them, groping blindly to tuck them over his body.
Sleep here. I don't fucking care, Potter. You're the one who's too.
He continued incoherently, voice dropping and trailing off into nothing.
I'm not going to sleep on your floor.
Harry objected, outraged. The room wobbled around him again.
Bed,
Draco said. Flopped over, revealing the sharp yod of his shoulder blades and the top of his back, attractively dipped in the center and shadowed with the faint knobs of his spine.
You don't have to worry, I'll molest you. You made it perfectly clear that you...
His voice drifted off again sleepily, his back rising with slow and steady breaths. Harry glared at him. At Draco's hair stark and messy against the backdrop of his grey sheet, at the strangely vulnerable shape of his back, of his neck, and the loose-limbed ankles his arms were held, and headed unsteadily over to the bed to wake him up and tell him he was utterly daft. About which thing, sharing a bed, or what Harry might have unintentionally made clear because both were equally stupid, Harry wasn't sure. But the bed, when Harry got over to it, looked soft, inviting. The thread count of Draco's sheets was likely to be higher than Harry's, who usually didn't pay attention to that sort of thing. And the bed was certainly overlarge. Harry thought he must have expanded it after moving in or something. He rounded the bed to the opposite side and carefully lifted the covers before sliding in and making sure to maintain a healthy distance between himself and Draco, who started snoring quietly. The mattress felt soft as down, and Harry's muscles unclenched and relaxed all at once. Swooping room settling around him as he allowed his eyes to side shut. He rolled, getting comfortable on his side, and inhaled a comforting, salty, smoky, sweet smell against his pillow, like ocean air and mysterious potions and Molly's kitchen when she baked. He buried his face against it and fell asleep. Harry was going to kill whoever was shaking him. He opened his eyes, then immediately shut them again, the vise that was wrapped around his head tightening as the light filtered in.
I saw that, Potter,
Malfoy snapped, sounding entirely unsympathetic. The hand prodding his shoulder pulled away, and then a thin, foul-smelling vial was shoved under his nose. Harry's stomach roiled. He reached out and took the vial, braced himself, and downed it in one swallow. Nausea swept over him, fierce and overwhelming, and the pounding in his head intensified for a few miserable moments before it faded to manageable levels.
Thanks,
Harry croaked, turning over. Sat up, startled to realize that he and Malfoy were both in bed together. Still.
Fuck.
Malfoy rolled his eyes.
We didn't check,
he said flatly, but there was a hint of question to the statement.
I'd remember.
Yeah, Harry agreed, then shut his mouth with a click when Malfoy's blinking went into overdrive.
I mean, no, yeah, we didn't. I had to use my loo, I know, but I woke up and you were...
Malfoy faltered, gaze sliding away.
I was what?
Harry asked, sure he didn't want to know.
In bed with me?
Malfoy finished.
You told me to,
Harry said, irritated. He gripped the sheets in his fists, burying his hands in his lap to hopefully disguise his erection. Malfoy leaned back against the headboard of his bed, legs stretched out under him, doing nothing at all to disguise anything on his part. Harry noticed in his periphery. Harry resolutely didn't look down.
I didn't just invite myself, Malfoy.
Malfoy jerked. He frowned darkly.
Last night you called.
He shook his head and pressed his mouth into a tight line, rubbing a hand across his face, which still looked sleep-soft. He had a pillow crease across one cheek.
I propositioned you.
Harry swallowed.
You were drunk and were friends. Well, yes, I suppose.
He paused.
That's why? Why what?
Harry struggled to sit up more fully. He took a deep breath, wondering if this might just be one of the most bizarre alcohol-induced dreams he'd ever had. He eyed Malfoy's hand, absently stroking the inside of his forearm. Malfoy glowered at him for a moment.
Never mind, Potter. I'm just grateful that one of us, that you, actually had the presence of mind for once to... That's why I said no.
Harry interrupted loudly. His chest felt tight, ribs constriction around his lungs. Malfoy gave him an unsure look and abruptly settled in the act of turning to climb out of the bed. Then, lest Malfoy think it was a come-on, Harry added,
And we live together. It's a bad idea.
He was sure it was. His cock might not, but it wasn't in charge, no matter what kind of information it was trying to relay at the moment. With a sudden and irrepressible regret, he thought of Ginny last night, asking how long they'd be housemates for. Much too bloody long to start something only to have it grow awkward because Harry couldn't keep it in his trousers. Stupid magic contract. But then Malfoy's eyes dropped. He lingered on Harry's mouth for a long moment.
It's not so perverse, is it?
Malfoy asked, eyes gleaming.
I don't know, Harry said.
He cleared his throat, his torso angling closer with a mind of its own.
Probably. All right,
Malfoy murmured.
But I'm not going to be here forever, so do you care?
No, branched forth from Harry's lips before he could think about it. His eyes broke in the middle, the way it hadn't since it was 13.
I mean, shut up, Potter,
Malfoy said, then closed the distance between them. Malfoy's mouth was soft, his lips slightly parted. His breath felt warm and moist against Harry's skin before he slanted his mouth over Harry's with a gentle, almost curious touch. Harry kissed him back automatically, lips seeking more contact, one hand coming up to touch Malfoy's jaw and splay his fingers out over it. Malfoy's knuckles brushed over Harry's breastbone lightly, and if the kiss was sweeter than Harry had previously imagined it would be, it was no less exciting for all that. He had a muffled groan and realized it was coming from his own throat as Malfoy slipped his tongue into Harry's mouth and stroked Harry's. It tasted of mint, like he dosed himself with a breath charm after taking the potion, and Harry shuddered suddenly, his cock jerking against the front of his bottoms and growing to full hardness. He reached to pull Malfoy closer, but Malfoy pulled away, panting shallowly.
All right,
he said. Breathless, lips tingling, Harry watched him narrowly. Malfoy glanced away.
All right, what?
Harry said, voice coming out husky. It irritated him. It was too telling when Malfoy looked as cool and unflustered as if they kissed every day for the last 10 years, but for the tinge of pink spreading high and sharp over his cheekbones.
What does that
mean? Harry wanted to demand. But the word wouldn't come, and maybe the answer didn't matter much anyway.
Not sure,
Malfoy admitted with a rough laugh. He idly stroked his hand over his stomach, looking thoughtful. Harry bunched his hands in his lap tighter, and Malfoy unexpectedly reached out and slapped the top of his thigh. Harry started.
Come on, then.
Come on, where? I said, bewildered and aroused near to the point of anger.
Come on and get out of my bed,
Malfoy said, his eyes somehow managing to make it sound like an invitation to strip down and stay in it. He got up, grabbing a dressing gown that had been tossed over the back of a wing chair, and shrugged it on.
We're going to train your house.
Harry looked at him and didn't move. Malfoy raised his eyebrows expectantly, and Harry huffed.
I need a minute to shower and such. I don't have all day, Paul.
He stopped, cleared his throat. It looked like he was trying not to laugh, and Harry glared at him, cursing his instinctive physical response and the fact that Malfoy seemed to have no issue displaying his or climbing out of bed at a pivotal moment.
Of course, you should shower. I can smell the whiskey seeping from your pores from here. Go have a shower.
Harry pursed his lips at the implicit challenge. He met Malfoy's eyes and gave a mental shrug, because he'd be fucked if he'd let Malfoy stand there with that excessively smug expression writ across his naturally smug features, then toss the blanket he was clutching away from himself. And there it was, poking against his flannel bottoms, like it was determined to say hello to the world. Harry stood up, controlling a wince when his cock tented out his bottoms further, and, with all of the nonchalance he could muster, walked past Malfoy.
Thanks. That'll give me time to wank too. Best way to start the morning,
he added, grinning when Malfoy made a tiny, incoherent sound behind him.
I'll see you downstairs in 20.
To be continued. Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Claiming of Grimmauld Place by bixgirl1. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or AO3.